Yeah, the Braves won the series, but the offense still wasn't good enough. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, June 16th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Tons of fun stuff on the newsletter, by the way, that we haven't even gotten to in the show, whether it's another look at Ozzie Albies and some of the struggles there, news roundup. Bunch of premium subscribers signed up this week when we went and broke down all of the losses and assigned blame to them. So go check that out again, bravestoday.com. I want to get to some of the big news, trade starting to happen in baseball. I want to get to the rotation being changed for the upcoming Mets series. But first, we've got to talk about this Colorado series. Atlanta goes 2-1. You win the series. Definitely a good thing. First time you won a series since mid-May. But Atlanta has an opportunity to sweep and doesn't do it. Would have been their first sweep since mid-April against Minnesota, and something that you arguably should do when you're facing a team who is, after Game 3, is 14-57. And the thing about the frustration here is you got very good outings from two of your three starters. Bryce Elder struggled on Friday night. He gets pulled on Friday, 3 to third inning, 7 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, gives up a homer. The Braves end up using 6 different relievers to get through the rest of that game. Aaron Bummer finishes the 4th. Pierce Johnson pitches the 5th, comes back out, gets an out in the 6th. Dylan Dodd takes over there. And Yodi Los Santos ends up getting the win. Raisel Iglesias in the 8th, Dylan Lee in the 9th. Atlanta wins 12-4 after exploding late. 3-run home runs in the 6th and the 7th, and then 5 more runs in the 8th inning. Game 2, Spencer Strider looks fantastic. The velocity is better, right? He's not back to where he was. Remember, 2023, he averaged 97.2 on the fastball. He was not there on Saturday, but instead of averaging 95, like I think 95.1, he averaged 96.2. He touched 98 in the outing. It was 7 whiffs on 23 fastballs, 17 whiffs on 23 swings at the slider. The Rockies put 1 slider into play. 1. He dipped a little bit in like the 6th inning. You saw him, he went to the curveball for the first couple times. He threw 6 straight balls to open the inning. None of them over, like, all fastballs that were over 95 miles an hour. But it was that whole thing of it's his final inning. He could reach back, grab a little extra. He got 95.5 twice in the final 2 batters. Ended up with 13 strikeouts. And the fun little history there for Strider was 13 strikeouts. That was the 5th time he's had a start for Atlanta with 13 or more strikeouts, tying John Smoltz for the most in franchise history. Obviously, Strider did it in 60 starts. Smoltz did it in 466. So, fun little thing there. On his next time he has 13 strikeouts in an outing, will set a franchise record. And then we saw Grant Holmes turn around the very next day on Sunday and pick up 15 strikeouts over 6 1/3, 3 runs, 2 earned, 2 walks. He gives up a solo shot. He has a defensive error that allows a run to score. That's where the unearned run come from there. But Atlanta loses Game 3. And the issue here is this offense continues to struggle against bad pitching. Okay, the 3 starters this weekend for the Rockies. German Marquez entered Friday's game with an ERA of 7. He goes 5 innings with 1 run on 6 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. And most of Atlanta's scoring, again, 6th, 7th, 8th, it's all against the bullpen. Saturday, Chase Dollander, a talented prospect, but still a prospect, who entered the game with an ERA of 6.85, Goes 6 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. It's technically a quality start. It's one of those, like, technically it is because it was 3 earned runs over 6, although it was 4 total runs. And Atlanta just doesn't really get anything going against the bullpen and ends up winning 4-1. They lose the shutout in the 9th inning. And then Sunday was Austin Gomber's first start of the year. He was on the IL to start the season, was activated for the start. His ERA last year was 4.75. He goes 5 scoreless innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. I don't understand. I do, but I don't. How this offense can sometimes be good against a good starter. I'm thinking about Zach Wheeler's given up 11 earned runs to Atlanta in 10 2/3 this year. Dylan Cease and Michael King in the first series of the year. Lucas Giolito for Boston got whacked around by the Braves. But then they can have series like this, where those 3 starters, just the starters, Atlanta scored 5 earned runs in 16 innings. They struck out 15 times, and they went 3 for 13 with runners in scoring position on those guys. And it's not just Colorado that's done this. Bailey Falter and Carmen Mladinsky for the Pirates did this. Quinn Priester did this for Milwaukee. It's not just this weekend. The Braves' offense sometimes disappears against good pitching. And in a season full of frustrating things, that's one of the most frustrating. On paper, you absolutely had the advantage here. And the bullpen, like one of the worst bullpens in baseball by ERA, and you made things happen sometimes against their best reliever in Jake Bird, right? He was the pitcher on record that took the blown save in game 1. He gave up 3 runs on 2 hits and a walk in an inning. And then Victor Vodnik, former Braves prospect, by the way, gave up 3 runs on 3 hits in an inning to take the loss. So Bird had the blown save and Vodnik had the loss. Like, you've done things against their bullpen, but you just couldn't really figure out the starters, and the starters weren't that good of starters. And that's frustrating. And then you combine that with the Braves bullpen being shaky, and I'm thinking about Sunday, how Enyel De Los Santos, 4 runs on 3 hits and a walk, doesn't record an out. Jose Ruiz comes in, finishes up the inning, but 3 more runs on 2 hits and 2 walks. There's a reason Jose Ruiz was available for Atlanta to sign. Like, nobody wanted him for a reason. And again, I've said this a couple times now. When a contender DFAs a reliever, and the Phillies are absolutely contending for, their plan is to make a deep postseason run. When the Phillies DFA a reliever, that should tell you something. Philly's bullpen is not good. It has not been good in years. And if Philly is willing to give up on this guy and just send him out of town for nothing, should tell Atlanta it's probably not a similar situation as when you rescue somebody from LA, like you did Raisel Iglesias, or Colorado, like you did Pierce Johnson. It's not that kind of situation, right? They're a contending team. They have a good pitching development department. They just can't seem to figure out the bullpen. But if their bullpen's so bad and they still saw fit to get rid of Jose Ruiz, that should tell you he's not very good. Maybe you should just, I don't know, not rely on that guy. And so it feels like we're going to need to see a bunch of changes between now and like over this next 2 weeks. We're going to get to the next 2 weeks, by the way. We're going to talk about that. We talked about this on Friday about moving the rotation around. The Braves did it a little bit. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But overall, this weekend for me, I think I want to explain it as like missed opportunities, right? You had an opportunity to get a sweep on Sunday. Again, your first sweep since mid-April, and you didn't do it. And not only did you not do it, but you looked bad doing it. Atlanta had 6 hits, all singles. Atlanta did not have a single extra base hit in this game. It got so out of hand that the Braves put position player Luke Williams in to pitch the 9th. The Rockies had more runs scored than hits. They scored 10 runs on 9 hits with 5 walks. And then the most frustrating thing for the weekend, not the most frustrating thing, but a frustrating thing for the weekend, is Atlanta was one strikeout away from setting, I think it was like the franchise record for strikeouts across 2 games. But Luke Williams didn't strike anybody out in the ninth because they went with Luke Williams over an actual pitcher. So it's like you had 16 strikeouts of the Rockies and you still lost the game. The day after you set the single game, the 9-inning game strikeout record as a team with 19 against the Rockies. I know the Rockies are terrible, which makes it more inexcusable. You've lost 2 of your 6 games to them this year. I hope that these outings from Strider and from Holmes carry over to their next time out, because Atlanta needs those guys to be better than they have been in some of their previous outings, and Atlanta needs stuff like this. They need this kind of strikeout stuff, because I think it's clear you're going to have to carry the offense. And coming up, you've got some tough opponents to do it. Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Let's break down the pitching change. We talked about this last week. I wrote about it on the newsletter, talked about it on the Friday live show. My suggestion was to push Chris Sale from Sunday into the next series. And the thought process there was, this season so far, Chris Sale had made 2 starts against the NL East. Both of them were against Philly. He had made 6 against the NL West. And on that's something where you have 1 series, I think it's at home against the Giants, left against the NL West. But you've played 28 games against the NL West, and the Braves are 8-20, and 4 of those 8 wins came against Colorado. So against the non-Colorado teams, the Braves are 6-18. It's a .333 winning percentage against the NL West this year, and you still have a series at Truist against the Giants, who just added Rafael Devers, by the way. We'll talk about that in the third segment. Because apparently there's a Braves connection here. Again, we'll get to that. And I am okay, and I think it's a good move for the Braves to change the rotation for this week. Your matchups now against the Mets, and we're going to break down this whole series starting tomorrow. David Peterson versus Spencer Schwellenbach on Tuesday. Paul Blackburn versus Chris Sale on Wednesday. And then Clay Holmes versus Spencer Strider on Thursday. So, yes, you have to face Clay Holmes, who has been good this year, ERA under 3. But you don't face Kodai Senga, who went on the injured list with a hamstring injury. You don't have to deal with the whole idea of Griffin Canning coming in and being the guy against you. You don't have to face Tyler Megill. You get Paul Blackburn, who struggled in his first start back. Again, you get David Peterson, who has been good, 5-2, 2.49 ERA as a lefty. That's going to give you some trouble there. But you got, again, Schwellenbach going. I feel like you have the pitching advantage in all 3 games, provided this version of Spencer Strider you saw on Saturday is the Spencer Strider you get next week in Truist. If that is the case, then you have the pitching advantage there over Clay Holmes, just based on pure stuff, even though Clay Holmes has been very good now that he's moved into the rotation. But doing this, setting this up this way, gives you the ability to utilize Chris Sale some more here. You will get, so again, Schwellenbach on Tuesday, Sale on Wednesday, Strider on Thursday. That was Elder's slot. So they swap Strider and Elder. Elder will then go on Friday in Miami, which I think is big. And then Grant Holmes would be on Saturday. No idea what they'll do on Sunday. I don't exactly know what the plan will be for Sunday. That day would line up to be Schwellenbach. You probably have to throw Schwellenbach on Sunday in Miami, simply because I love the idea of a bullpen game and you hold Schwellenbach for Monday in New York versus the Mets, the 23rd. But that is game 6 of a 13-game stretch without a day off. So you can't necessarily plan on a bullpen game because like you could blow your bullpen and then you have 7 divisional games left against the Mets and against Philly. And this stretch, like I touched on it on the live show on Friday, but I touched on it on the postcast yesterday as well. We're going to know by June 30th what the final fate of this team is. We're going to know if this iteration of the Atlanta Braves is going to challenge for a wild card spot or if they're going to be done or if they're just going to be out of it and we're just kind of running out the string and running out the season here. Because again, right now, the Atlanta Braves are in 3rd place. They're 13 games back of New York, but they have 7 games to play against New York. They are 10.5 behind Philly. They play Philly 3 times in this stretch. They do get to take on Miami for 3, who is, a reminder, 28-41 and 88 runs negative in run differential. Atlanta's plus 12 right now. But the big thing that Atlanta's going to have to figure out, and we're going to have an answer one way or the other, is can you beat good teams? Because right now, the Braves are 22-31 against teams with winning records. And yes, they got a couple wins against the Rockies, but they didn't do what everybody else has done against the Rockies and sweep the Rockies. Again, the Rockies have 14 wins on the year. 2 of those came against Atlanta. And so, can they beat good teams? Again, New York, 45-27. They are 4 games above 500 against teams that are above 500. Philly, 42-29. They are 2 games above 500. If you go back to last year and you look at the postseason standings, or who qualified for the postseason last year, only 2 teams that qualified for the postseason last year did not have a winning record against teams over 500. It's the Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers. And both of them, Detroit was 3 games below 500, 47-50. Kansas City was 9 games below 500, 45-54. Both those teams had the advantage of playing a bunch of games against the White Sox. The Braves have played 2 different series against Colorado. They went 4-2. So they got some wins, but not as many as they should have gotten. They've played Miami a little bit. That series didn't go exactly Atlanta's way as well, simply because Game 3 was rained out, and 1 and 2, Atlanta won 10-0 in Game 1, and then got shut out in Game 2, 4-0. So Atlanta's 1-1 against Miami this year, and they are 4-2 against Colorado this year. You play them again. You play them 3 times this week, and then you play them 8 times in August. And at that point, it may be too little too late. You'll be past the trade deadline. Again, it may be too little too late at that point. Speaking of trade deadline, Rafael Devers got moved yesterday. Huge deal. Every baseball group chat I'm in exploded. But apparently there was a Braves connection here. Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby shocked about how this went yesterday, right? Because Rafael Devers got moved last night, the DH for the Boston Red Sox. And for those of you who haven't been fully in touch with the other stories from around the league, longtime third baseman, he's 2 years into a 10, 11 year deal. It's a massive contract. And they signed Alex Bregman to play third base without, I guess, going ahead of time to Rafi and letting him know, hey, we're bringing in somebody else who plays your position. And to remind you, Rafi, 10-year, $313.5 million deal. He signed long-term. And I want to say he's in second year of that deal. And so they asked him to move to designated hitter, and he didn't like it. He did. And then Tristan Casas gets hurt at first base. And supposedly, this is all unconfirmed and whatever, supposedly they asked him to play some first base and he said no. You guys told me to put the glove up, I put the glove up. Now you want me to move positions again in season? He said no. So they've been going with a bunch of other options at first base. It's been okay, right? It hasn't been the worst thing in the world. But there's a lot of tension there, right? The owner flew to Kansas City after the Cassis injury to talk to Devers. It didn't necessarily work out and all of that. And so now there has been a trade, and Devers, with 8 years left on this deal, went to the San Francisco Giants for Jordan Hicks, the failed relief to starting conversion, Kyle Harrison, a lefty pitcher, who I actually don't think is as good as people thought he was, right? Like, he has his fastball, he's a lower slot, higher spin efficiency guy. And so because of that, those guys really struggle on secondary pitches, right? It was like this. Boston's going to have to see if they can fix him. They optioned him down immediately, but Boston's going to have to see if they can help him out a little bit. I'm thinking they probably just try to start throwing a bunch of secondary pitches on him, right? You have a good fastball, and then you've got 5 other pitches you throw. It's a kitchen sink approach. I'm thinking that's probably the best way to handle him, and you're just counting on locations and sequencing to be good, because none of those secondary options are going to be that great. We'll see. Like, a cutter's assured. That's what Boston does. But that feels like the route here. And then there were 2 other. They got outfielder prospect James Tibbs, who was, I think, he was a pretty high pick last year. And then they got like single A infielder Jose Bello or something. It's not actually that great of a return. The big thing for Boston is they get rid of the contract, because it really felt like that contract wasn't going to age well. And a lot of the public opinion, and supposedly, we've been told, private opinion across front offices, was that the deal was going to be underwater in a couple of years. It was going to be a bad deal. But there's 2 different Braves-related impacts in here. The first one is when you look at the standings. One of the teams that Atlanta has to get past if they want to contend this year is the San Francisco Giants. They are right now second in the NL West. They are 2 games behind the Dodgers, and they have a 1-game lead on the Padres for the second wildcard spot, and the Phillies have the first wildcard spot. And they just got better by adding Rafael Devers. Like, he is tied for the league lead in games played. He hasn't missed a game this year, 73 games. He led the American League at the time of the trade in walks with 56, hitting .272 with a .905 OPS, 15 home runs, almost 60 RBI already. And again, hasn't played the field. Probably won't play the field here either. They have a very good third baseman in Matt Chapman, a Gold Glove winning third baseman in Matt Chapman. They have Bryce Eldridge, a slugger at first base, on the way. They'll probably play him at DH as well. So, like, it's not necessarily a given that he grabs a glove again. He may just stay as a DH for a while. But if you look at WAR on Baseball Reference by position, San Francisco was 19th at negative 0.5 WAR from their DH position. It's been mostly Wilmer Flores, and he's been underwhelming. And then after that, it was a lot of Luis Matos had 6 plate appearances. Heliot Ramos had 12. Willy Adames had 1 game at DH, right? So we're going to see what happens there, but it's not been very good at DH. It does mean if you end up not contending, there's a destination that could have potentially taken Marcell Ozuna and given you something for it, and that's gone. But the other really, I'm going to say, confusing part of this is Sean McAdam of MassLive.com, who is a reporter, covers the Red Sox, a reputable source here, don't think he has any reason to make stuff up, said that among other teams that checked in on Rafael Devers, the Blue Jays, who don't really have a positional fit for Devers, the Padres, who don't really have the money to pay him or the prospects to make the deal without giving up one of their 2 top prospects in DeVries or the catcher whose name I can't remember, Ethan Salas, and the Braves. Supposedly, the Braves checked in on Rafael Devers. I don't know how that would have worked. I think the assumption you would be making there would be that they would be moving on from Ozuna. If you trade for Rafael Devers, you would have needed to, one, like, he's not going to play third base or first base for you. He wasn't playing that for Boston. He refused to do it. But also, you have Marcell Ozuna at the position. So would you have been willing to either IL Ozuna, shut him down for the year, or ship him out to install Devers as your DH? And then when you look at the contract, there's a bunch of deferred money on there, which is not a thing the Braves like to do. Like, it's $7.5 million deferred. But the payroll number is somewhere between 27 and 28.5 million every year for the next 8 seasons. And so I'm struggling with this thought. Part of me wonders, did the Braves check in on something else? Did the Braves say, hey, we'll take him if you give us Jarren Duran and Trevor Story and cover some of the money? Or was it just we had a conversation with Atlanta, we clearly realized it wasn't going to work, and we moved on? Because if Atlanta is legitimately looking at acquiring somebody like Rafael Devers, who, again, very good hitter this year. He's been one of the better DHs in baseball this year. That kind of signifies that, one, you're going to fill the DH spot up, which means you're not going to be able to rotate Murphy and Baldwin in at DH. It means that you are being very aggressive at the deadline. Because some of the reports we got over the weekend is the Braves do not intend to sell. We got that report over the weekend. And that they are looking to acquire left field and shortstop. Which makes me think maybe it's, hey, we take the Devers contract if you give us Story and Duran. Jarren Duran can play left, Trevor Story can play short. And then Atlanta probably would have turned and tried to flip Devers to somebody else. It makes me think that's what they would have. That's the only logical conclusion here. Is that where Atlanta should be buying? I don't know. I feel like the bullpen's a much bigger problem, as we saw over the weekend. And Yadiel Santos had that struggle. We saw where Jose Ruiz is not good. I really don't think Jose Ruiz should still be here when we start play on Tuesday versus the Mets. And that's something where Scott Blewett's been pretty good for Baltimore since we traded him. Because he should never have been DFA'd in the first place, especially to add Craig Kimbrell for one outing, and then DFA Craig Kimbrell. Should have just kept Scott Blewett at that point. They didn't do that. The Braves did make some promotions over the weekend that are interesting. Hayden Harris, the lefty undrafted free agent in 2022. So he didn't get picked in the first 20 rounds of the draft. They signed him. He had 22 2/3 innings for Columbus. 2 runs, 11 hits, 37 strikeouts. They put him in AAA. Didier Fuentes, 19 years old. He's a starter. Mid to high 90s. The velo plays up. He gets a ton of extension. A really flat vertical approach angle. He's got a slider with it as well. They let him start on Sunday. He looked really good. I do think he could follow that route that we used to see in the past, where they'd call a guy up as a reliever late in the year. I do honestly think that you need to shake up the bullpen again, probably. In retrospect, the Blewett move was a mistake. I don't think it's time to give up on Niño de los Santos, but he shouldn't be coming in a 1-run game in the 7th inning. This is something where after, Raisel Iglesias is a free agent after this year. And Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, Aaron Bummer, and Yadiel de los Santos can all leave after next season. You've got to figure out. Daisybel Hernandez is on the IL with forearm inflammation. You've got to figure out your next core of relievers. You're going to have to sign somebody. And I'm going to do a write-up on Braves Today, as well as a pod about the financial situation, where you are money-wise when Profar comes back. Because you did save money by not having Profar. It should be very easy to reset the CBT, barring some sort of massive acquisition like a Trevor Story and Rafael Devers, if they had tried to do that or whatever. But you're going to have to figure out the bullpen, and you got to get some guys chances back there. Fuentes, I still think he can start, but he may be a guy they use late in the year in Atlanta in the pen. Giancarlo Lara, flamethrower, really raw on the IL with the blister right now. He's shot through the minor leagues this year. They may use him as a reliever late. Hayden Harris, they may use him as a reliever in the majors late. I think Dylan Dodge should stay up the rest of the year. Like, you've got a lot of opportunities if you end up selling. And again, I think we'll know after this next 2 weeks. You can move. I would honestly move 3 or 4 of those relievers, right? Raisel Iglesias, if you get anything for him, I think you do, because I think he's pitched in the 8th. He's been not bad in the 8th. I think he can rebuild some value and you can move him. Pierce Johnson, again, 1 more year of him if you pick up the option. You're probably not going to move Joe Jimenez because of the injury return. But Aaron Bummer, you can move him as well. And create some spaces to audition some prospects in the bullpen late this year. You'll still have Dylan Lee. You'll probably still have De Los Santos. You'll have Dylan Dodd. It's just all the Dylans down there. I do think that's probably the route Atlanta ends up going if this next 2 weeks doesn't go well. Again, you've got 10 games against the Mets and Phillies, 3 against the Marlins. That's the rest of this month. You don't play a game outside of the division until July 2nd when the Angels come to town. So hopefully the Braves can figure it out. Hopefully we get some more clarity on the Rafael Devers thing. I don't really know how that, again, I don't really understand the logistics for that for Atlanta unless it's what I speculated there. It's some sort of give us Story and Duran and we'll take Devers' contract off your hands and then flip Devers. It's the only thing I can think of that makes sense. Let me know what you think. Can you think of any other trade that would have made sense for Rafael Devers with the Braves in Boston? I don't quite know how this would have worked, but maybe I'm not thinking about a different angle here. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball Show, Braves_today on X. You can email us, contact@bravestoday.com. If you're listening on audio, do me a favor, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop our daily episodes, as well as when we go live on Friday for our Friday live shows. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.